Hey fellas, it's Zem from Shrike Gaming, and I'm going to do a video on everybody's favorite tactic in World of Tanks. The ones that probably infuriates most people, and there's a certain amount of uh, legitimate reason why it pisses people off. And that's what I'm talking about is the lemming train. The start of the map, start of the match, and you have 9, 10, 12 tanks go one way, and you have 3 tanks go the other way, or vice versa, or whatever. But you know what I'm talking about, right? The the essential people that have a difficulty understanding what numerical superiority means on a map. Uh, it's oftentimes interesting to watch when people pull this left and right in games. Everybody's had those games that you just wonder, well, why are you going where you're going with that many tanks, and what are you doing with them? Now, there's two kinds of lemmings. There's your regular lemming, your lemming train, which is the train of tanks that wander off over to a flank, and they get there, and there's a bunch of pokey pokey, shooty shooty, hidey hidey. Everybody wants to be a sniper lemming, and that one is usually nothing more than a circle jerk of non-progression. The game doesn't progress past that point. It stalls out, and usually ends up means you lose the game. I mean, there's a certain amount of counting involved, things like that, and which is sometimes hard for players. But we won't we won't delve into that. And the other kind of lemming is what I like to affectionately call the lemming push. Is where the majority of a tanks go one line, but they don't do the hidey hidey, pokey pokey, shooty shooty. Everybody wants to be a sniper. They actually recognize the fact that they have the numbers, and they take advantage of that. And if anybody's not familiar with what a lemming is, or where the term comes from, the lemming is in fact a small rodent, Arctic rodent, and they're known for a bizarre behavior of where they have a tendency to jump off a cliff. And they don't actually die, most of them, because they actually know how to swim. So it's not like you hear these wives' tales of lemmings jump off a cliff and they all die because it's a suicide. Well, they don't actually do it. And this is actually, it's not too far off from a typical
They reached the final precipice.
World of Tanks game.
This is the last chance to turn
Uh,
back.
I mean, we can all envision this as we're sitting in our tanks right now, as you watch
Yep, over they go, casting themselves bodily out into space.
a stream of players head off in a certain direction. I know this is a little over dramatic, but we've all been here. See, yeah, there they go. Oh, there goes a heavy. I mean, we all get this, right? We all understand this at some basic tactic of players that don't really get this concept. So, I'm just trying to lighten it up here a little bit, but you get what I'm saying. That's what a lemming is, and that's where the term comes from. Personally, to me, in this game, when I started playing World of Tanks, and I started to see people using the term lemming push, lemming rush, lemming train, whatever you want to call it, kind of hardened back into the days when I used to play this game, which was kind of dating myself, which was a 1991 game called The Lemmings, and it essentially plays very similar to World of Tanks. In fact, the maps kind of actually look like a World of Tank map, which is essentially is you're trying to get a bunch of players to one end of the map without losing the least amount of players to win the game. Right? I'm sure some people are familiar with this game. But this right here, this to me, this is very similar to World of Tanks. Yeah, so whatever. But you're getting my idea of what Lemmings actually means. So I'm actually going to bring you a couple games in World of Tanks where I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, the difference between a lemming train and a lemming push, and what you need to be if you find yourself on a team that does at least the first one, and what you need to do if you're doing the second one. So the first one I'm going to show a video of essentially a lemming push. Well, it's an overload of one side with the numerical advantage of tanks, and I'll be explaining to you what's going on as we play it, and kind of show you, because it's going to be interesting. You're going to see two actual lemming pushes, one on our side, one on their side, and you'll see what happens. And you'll see what I'm talking about is because both teams had exceptionally good players on each side, so it was kind of an interesting game to watch. Second one is going to be what happens when the lemmings get to a point and they can no longer progress the game, and there they sit playing hidey pokey shooty, and why they lost. So I will be in the games right about now. Right, fellas, we're back here with the game that I'm going to hopefully be explaining to you what I mean by what a lemming push is. And this is we're playing here in a platoon with two of my clanmates, X and Whip. We're both running autoloader. All three of us are running autoloaders. And when I was talking about earlier with these lemmings, as people call them, and you'll actually see somebody in some game call us a bunch of lemmings. But the difference here is that we realize that we have a numerical advantage, right? And that simply playing back and not using that to our advantage really ends up being a loss 9 times out of 10 if you don't play, if you don't actually push. So you'll see most of us go this way. Actually, you'll see almost all of us go this way, except for the one lone T62A. He apparently didn't get the memo, or failed to count, or he doesn't even have his mini-map on, one or the other. Who knows? Who cares? So we're moving up. We know as we're doing this, we're actually talking to each other here about the sheer number of tanks that we have here. We have 2 in the trench. We have all these tanks, and the only ones that are not with us are a 57 and a Bat Chat and a 62A. So 12 of the 15 players are here. And that means that we are not, we do not have anybody on the other side. So most people will say, well, hey, this is a lemming train. They just lemmoned off over to their death. Well, no, because what you're going to watch here is us not do your standard lemming train. And I'm using those two terms kind of loosely here. What you see is that what happens is when you actually do push, knowing that we have the numerical advantage, knowing that we only so far have spotted 4 tanks compared to our 12 that are sitting here, and now sitting simply watching as things progress, we're going to push. So they've already knocked out the 62A that decided that he was better off to just be by himself. And we, at this point, know that if we don't do something here, we are a very good chance we're going to lose. So the other team, same thing, right? Majority of their tanks are on that line, and they've pushed, or starting to push. We realize that as well. So does most of the team that we're playing with. So, in this kind of situation, we're going to knock out everything that's on our line, and that's exactly what the mediums and the 57 are doing, and that is to get everybody knocked out on this line so we can deal with what's coming. So we have the E100, IS-7, and the E4. We've already knocked those tanks out. And if you notice by now, we're already up 5-2. Bat Chat's already pointed out to everybody that we're all a bunch of retards and we're a bunch of lemmings and all that blah blah. As he plays his, medium in the sniper position, he's literally what you would call he would do well in a lemming train. We recognize the fact, we pushed, we knocked out the line, and now we're coming back. Is there a chance that we could go and try to cap this? Problem is they have too many tanks sitting there. So instead, we come back, and we are going to push into what they have here. They've stopped the cap. They've given us a chance to come back, use our tanks. We've actually kind of switched the map control on this deal. They own most of the north half, we own the south half, and we're just simply now is working them over as best we can, as fast as we can. We already have the advantage, especially in hit points and number of tanks. So we are just literally just hanging out here and going to mop them up. Now, when I was talking about the lemmings and all that stuff, this isn't necessarily what you call it. I'm just using this term loosely as a lemming push, but what it is recognizing the fact that we have a numerical advantage, pushing, not fucking around, progressing the game for a win, right? And this is what pisses a lot of people off in this game, is when people don't recognize these little things like numbers and whatnot. So pushing up here again, we've knocked out almost everything to behind us other than one AMX, who's certainly getting surrounded here by 3 or 4 tanks, leaving this little gob of tanks over here. So now, like I said, just simply more of a cleanup thing. Their push failed. They did the exact opposite of us. When I was talking about the lemming push, they did the exact same thing we did, except for theirs stalled. They went directly to cap and essentially stalled out once they got there. We are going to win this game, not because we stopped and played peeky pokey, shooty, and all that kind of crap. We were aggressive. We pushed. We realized we had the numbers, and we didn't just sit and watch the game happen, right? And this is what pisses a lot of players off, is when the term lemming is used, it's usually in essentially a bad connotations, because what typically happens is you see players take their tanks to a certain spot, sit there and watch the game happen, right? They don't progress the game. They don't change their play style to match the tank composition. They don't match the terrain of what they're playing on, and this is what really pisses people off, right? When you hear the term lemming train, you automatically think of, oh shit, there they go off to their death, with the majority of the tanks. And I have a T30 video in here about me having a fucking epic rant about inability to count tanks and lemming trains, right? And what I was trying to express in this video is that lemming trains, in this sense, is a lemming push, is an entirely different thing. This is where we take advantage of our numerical superiority, crush aside, knock out HP, and roll until we get to the point where we have more tanks and more HP than the opposing team. The other team tried it. They failed once they reached a certain point, and they could no longer progress the game. They had 4 tanks clustered at D1, and they had nowhere to go with them. They couldn't get away. They stalled, right? And they lost the game for it. Now you're going to see in the next video the similar, what we call the lemming train, and you'll see that how we're going to stall it and let our team push the one side for the win. So here comes the second video. All right, fellas, back with the second video in the Lemming Rush Lemming Push, Lemming Train Saga. And, we were talking about earlier in the last game of showing you what the difference is between the Lemming Train and the Lemming Push. And this is actually going to be a game where we're not going to do the pushing. We're going to do the essentially holding and stalling of a push. And you'll watch the other team's lemmings move in and stall out and advance because of just simply not paying attention, not counting, and all that kind of stuff. Now you're going to watch this game, and has something to do with every game that you play. You should be looking at tank composition and the terrain that you're going to be fighting on. And in this game, we have 4 heavies. They get, 6 heavies, and that is not that doesn't do us a whole lot, especially since I'm an autoloader heavy, and that is not something that you want to brawl with IS-7s and E-100s. And being that this is, like I said, not a map conducive for this tank or this brawling, I don't typically go down to that bottom line with this tank if I can help it. Everybody's like, well, some people would say that this, hey, if you were down there, you might have saved these 2 tanks or these two heavies. The other heavy, obviously putting himself out of position here, where he's simply going to drive in and get smoked by everything that's up on the hill that can shoot him. That's just part of the whole process of elimination for players that I just sometimes wonder, right? You just don't get. But he's going to die. Type 5 is going to die here shortly. And we have a Moss and an FE faced off 3 IS-7s, an E-100, and a fair amount of tanks. The Sheridan, I'm not sure terribly what he was up to down here. So essentially we have, 4 on 2. Our other third heavy here is slowly but surely dying to just about everything that's shooting. These guys back here, when I was talking about, tank composition, terrain, and all that stuff, if you can't get past the corner where those 2 are sitting right here, all you end up doing is getting shot by everything that's sitting up on that hill. So unless you have a plan, unless you can take the corner and the low road, there's absolutely no point in playing that position right there. Hence why I'm sitting where I'm sitting, right? I don't want to be there because you'll watch this Moss slowly start getting picked apart, not just by everything in front of him, artillery, and the stuff up on the hill has been slowly but surely whittling him down as he backs up. And like I said, this is knowing about maps, this is knowing all that kind of stuff. They also have these guys kind of pushed around the corner a little too far with the T-92 not necessarily being able to get all clean shots on those tanks. You can see now what I'm talking about with the FE and this being a corner that you don't want to be in. He just took 1,000 damage from everything that's sitting up on the hill. So we have literally a push here. We have a grill involved now, an E-100 and 3 IS-7s. They finished everybody off. Those 2 guys that were sitting there, as well as our Sheridan light tank, because that's a good place to sit in your Sheridan on the heavy brawl line. Now, so they've got their push. They've all got down here. They've all lemminged into us. At the same time that they're pushing, so we have 2 tanks. They had 5, and we at this moment are pushing their line. We're pushing into them. They broke through. We have the majority of the map control, and now we're essentially just sitting here holding against these tanks, waiting for our north push to actually finish off north side. So we wait, and this is the whole point about what I was talking about earlier about the difference between a lemming push and a lemming train. In the first video was a lemming push. We didn't stop until we cleared a flank. And once you clear the flank, once you get rid of all the bad guys, and then you can deal with whatever's left over. These guys don't. They essentially run into us, stopped, and are no longer pushing. They are no longer doing anything. They're just kind of hanging out here looking for shots up here. So we're forcing a reload, or I'm forcing a reload. Butts up here trying to support those guys. IS-7's coming around. I'm trying to keep lights lit for our two artillery that are paying attention. My platoon mate come back with his Leo 1. He's putting shots into him. Butthurt's putting shots into him. So now we've stopped this push cold, and now we're going to do a counter push into what was essentially their lemming train. Finish off the IS-7, and now that we have control of this failed lemming rush, our lemming train, they pushed at any given time with the number of tanks that they had. They could very easily have pushed around on and finished essentially a quarter health STB-1. I was full health, but I only have 4 rounds. Then I have a 30-some second reload. They could easily have killed the two of us with that number of tanks and that number of hit points, but they didn't. And this is the big difference that this is the big problem that people have with lemming trains, is if you're going to take all those tanks to a certain spot and you don't progress the game, you're going to lose. It's just simple. I mean, there is no other way around it. And this is what pisses people off about lemming trains. If you can't progress the game on that flank, then don't go there. If you want to play a sniper, go play a sniper. If you want to play a heavy tank, then you better be in that front line, playing that tank that way. And this is what, like I said, pisses people off. So we've counter pushed, we've gained map control, and about this time is when the enemy tanks really start to kind of surprise us a little bit. They put a nice little push on there. They had the numerical advantage on the B line, and they were able to finish off the few tanks that were over there. So that leaves us mostly, and this is where it's interesting. Right now, currently, I'm the only one that has pretty much any health. Everything else on this team is essentially almost a one-shot. And this is why you'll notice me here start moving up. I have to try to protect my platoon mates and their low health tanks as much as possible. So like I said, I'll put myself in kind of a position that's a little questionable, but at the same time, if they're shooting at me, they're not shooting at them. Plus, I also have some nice support tanks behind me. So I push up, start to get these guys' attentions. Right now I have the 430 and the IS-7 sitting here. They're not giving me much chance. Now I have both IS-7s sitting here. And like I said, just sheer hit points, these 3 right here should have pushed me. Being that I only have 1 tank in support of me, which is the STB-1. And now I have no tanks in support of me. So essentially me against 3 tanks. My teammates realize that, and they start pushing around the backside. And I'm most likely going to end up getting, once again, not pushed. They're not recognizing the fact that we are down tanks. Finish off the 140. These guys push around. They finish off the... I'm sorry, they didn't finish him off. Whip got killed. Grill 15 moves up. Object 430. They still have a slight, almost a slight advantage here with the 2 IS-7s. At any time could have moved down here and pushed onto both of them, which I don't understand why they didn't. And they're not actually paying attention. They for some reason think that I'm just hanging out over here. So finally get loaded. They finish off the grill. I hit the rock. Fucking outer space with that one. Go figure. Put the last shot into the that IS-7. And really, it's actually a pretty tight game right here. The 430 and me against this IS-7. If we don't kill him with 446 hit points, if I don't make 2 shots without the, thank goodness artillery was paying attention, we very well could have lost this game just because of the IS-7s. So, I've kind of given you the both sides of this Lemming train, Lemming push, and hopefully players that don't get this, you kind of understand what I was trying to talk you through with. If you have the numerical advantage in tanks and simply not progressing in the game, you become a Lemming train, and those are always detrimental to your win rate. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll be putting in some more up here a little bit later.